It features the Mountain Air stamp set, which is this baby here with the mountains and the trees and the scenery, and it uses all those pieces to create this scene that kind of grows. So the card starts out flat like this, and then you can open it up and then even write on the inside and so forth. But this is actually not a really difficult card to make, but I'm going to give you some really important tips and tricks. There are some things that have to work together so that you don't keep your card from opening or make your card not close correctly, and I will share those tips with you along with scoring and cutting directions for making this card base. And then you could turn it into anything, but I do love the way Mountain Air pairs with the Country Club Designer Series paper from the January through June mini catalog. So grab your supplies and let's get stamping. Okay, so I have my Stampin' Trimmer here, which has an arm that you might need for some of your measurements. It has a cutting blade and it has a scoring blade, so you just want to pay attention to which one you're using. My half sheet of cardstock is 5.5 by 8.5, and the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and line this up at 2 3/4 and put just sort of a guide cut for myself. So I'm going to use the cutting blade just sort of right in the center. I'm not going to go too far up or too far down, but that's going to mark my center line for me. Then I'm going to go back and I am going to start working across with my score lines. And so the score lines are all going to be at the right side of my card, okay, kind of like this. See how that goes? And I'm going to score to the center. Now, the cutting blade is the next one up here. I'm going to slide this all the way to the top. See how that works? And just get it out of the way. Okay, so I don't accidentally use it. So 1 1/4, I'm going to score to the half line, and there's a little tiny line in the middle of the scoring blade, and I'm going to stop when that hits the center there. Okay, the next score is at 2 inches, so I'm going to score 2 inches to the center. The next score is at 3 1/8 inches, so I'm going to score there. And then the next one is at 4 1/4. Now the 4 1/4 one goes all the way across because you want your card to still fold in half. So I'm going to go all the way across there. And then the last one is at 6 1/8. Okay, so I'm going to go right up to that line there and go ahead and score. Okay, so here is our card. Now I didn't go far enough down on the front with my cutting, so I'm going to put this back here at 2 3/4 and line this up, and I'm going to open up my top so I can slide my cutter blade here, and I want to make sure that I cut all the way to this top score line and all the way down to that 1 1/4 inch score line. Okay, so there is our card. Now we want to start folding. All right, so first thing you're going to do is you are going to fold this side so that your card folds in half, so it's going to go up. That same point, 4 1/4 on the opposite side, is actually going to go down. Okay, that's the easiest starting place. Then this one in the back is going to naturally want to fold there, and then these score lines on the front are going to zigzag from this point. So I'm going up here, I'm going down here, I'm going up here, and then ta-da! We have our whole card folded flat. Okay, see how that works? The next thing to do is to start attaching the pieces, and you can kind of see where they all go, but I have some tips about that that are important because you want to make sure your card still folds when you're done. So we are going to do some stamping, and I have my piece of Seaside spray and a piece of the garden green for our long forest, and I have some pieces here that I'm going to stamp for our trees and then die cut, and then we have our cloud to die cut and our greeting and our designer series paper, and then also a die cut circle. So all right, let's get stamping. I have my garden green, and you want to make sure that you have a foam layer involved in your stamping equation here. So in order to do that, I'm going to take my foam and I'm going to put it underneath here so that I don't stamp all over my foam. If my stamp's too big. Oh, it's not too bad. All right, so I want to leave some space at the bottom of this stamp because I want this to hook onto the card right here. So I gave that a little area. The blue here with Seaside Spray is less of a big deal where you put it, although you want to cut the whole piece because you're going to use that. And then we're going to also do the reversible part. And so this, you can wash it if you want to keep your hands less inky. But what you're going to do is flip that over and onto the back. and just sort of let that sit there, and then go ahead and stamp with the back of the stamp. And this is what the reversibles are meant to do. So cool thing from Stampin' Up. And this piece of cardstock I think is big enough to get on here. Yep. So now I have both the mountain background and the mountain detail. Okay. Also here in this color, I'm going to stamp some clouds, and we're going to go ahead and die cut those. And then I'm going to add my greeting. And for this stamp set, or for this project, I'm going to use the Keep Dreaming from Silhouettes here, which I think is a great message to go along with this. And I'm actually just going to throw this on the back here of this block and go ahead and pop this on. Okay, and then I can trim. Holy moly, that was totally crooked. Yeah, doesn't really matter. The answer to that is no, because I'm going to trim it anyway. So I have several to work from. Okay, now the other part of the stamping that's involved in this is this here. And you saw me stamp this, and then I stamped it on my cardstock. I'm going to actually, without re-inking, I'm just going to go ahead and stamp it again on here. So what that does is it gives me a really nice and light Seaside Spray mountain range. Okay, and then I'm going to take my trees, and it's probably easier to do the background first. So let's see. I'll go ahead and wash this so I don't get super inky. So I'm going to flip this over to the back, because the next layer I want to put on my circle is actually the background here. So I don't really need the whole thing, so I didn't ink the whole bit, but I am going to stamp off on my scratch paper once. And you see how I left a hole? That tells me that I had just a little bit of something on my stamp. So I'm going to re-ink it and go ahead and do that again. There we go, nice clean image, because I don't really want that extra. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but didn't really want that extra on my project. Okay, so now I have the background. I'm gonna quick throw this here on my chamois so I don't get super inked. And then I'm going to flip this over and ink it again. And if it doesn't match up exactly with those trees, that's totally fine. It doesn't really need to. It's sort of an image in the background. So I'm going to stamp this now right over the top. And then we have sort of that detail there. And I love the way this image is done on the stamp. It's just really forgiving. You can kind of do whatever you want. All right. Next, some trees to die cut. So I have a double tree, and I also have on the lighter green to match our card background in Pear Pizzazz, the single tree. And that, I think, gives me everything ready so that I can die cut. So let me do the die cutting. I'm going to use the Majestic mountain dies that coordinate with all the pieces and cut these pieces out, and then I'll show you how to put them on the card. Okay, so I do want to point out, when you go to cut the background, it doesn't line up exactly with the die. See how I've got the die kind of, I'll throw this away, kind of off-centered. It's close to lining up, but not exact. It doesn't really matter. And actually on my sample, I think I just cut it like really far low so you wouldn't even see that there was some not stamped area. It's really up to you. It's not going to show in your final card, okay? All right, so now we are going to start assembling. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mountain range. Now, if I put the mountain range here and have it go through, it's totally fine. But then when I try to like close the card, it would like pop this off, or open the card, it would pop this off. So what you need to do is you need to go ahead and trim this. So I'm going to go ahead and trim the edge here so that it's not quite so narrow. And then of course we know that this piece here is 2 3/4 inches wide, right? Because we scored that. So I'm actually going to go ahead and set this here on my trimmer to 2 3/4 inches. And just go ahead and cut that, okay? So this is gonna give us our second layer mountains. This is gonna be our background layer mountains, all right? And then we might as well kind of do the same thing here with this one. And they're pretty flat along the bottom, so you can kind of just stick it up there against the edge. And I kind of want, let's see, we'll do this part here. So I've got that there. I'm going to line this up at 2 3/4 and go ahead and cut it, because this piece you have to be exact with. The tree piece you can get away with a little bit more, and I'll show you why that works out when we get to that part. So first thing to attach is our mountain here, and this you want to go ahead and put on. I really like the idea of using tear tape because it is going to give us the best bond between the element we're adding and our card base. And there's not going to be a lot of surface area here because I'm actually going to line this up kind of as close as possible to the top to make our height as high as possible, which is going to overlap the, you can see kind of the tear tape there isn't even all covered, but we have a really nice bond there because tear tape is great stuff. Now this layer I'm going to put behind it. I could glue it directly on, but it looks so much better if there's a little space, right? So what I'm going to do with this then is grab my Stampin' Dimensionals and pop a couple down here at the bottom. Now this is the part where you have to be careful because it has to end right here. So if I take this and I go down further, then when we try to open the card, that won't work. So you only get to go to the space that is right there. So right at the card bank, right? See how see where this panel has to fold? So you can only go right up to the crease there and attach your extra mountain layer, okay? You could go up further if you wanted to, but you can't go down further. All right, so then the last mountain piece to put on, oops, is not that one. We want the detailed mountain piece. And I'm gonna pop this one on with some Stampin' Dimensionals. And we kind of wanna split the space as much as possible with our trees. So I'm gonna kind of put this down here. I'm gonna line up the right edge and then pop that kind of down below. See how I've left the shelf for the next piece to be right there. Speaking of the next piece, we have our trees. Now, you can see if you want to open this card, you can get away really with having these trees extend kind of wherever you want. So we're just gonna give that a trim here. Okay, watch I cut it shorter than 2 3/4. Make sure you don't cut it shorter than 2 3/4. There we go, whew, we're safe. And go ahead here, and then you can also actually just cut at the right side when you're done. But same as before, you can use tear tape or you could use dimensionals, whatever makes you happier at this point. And because your raised layer is actually going to come from the card itself, the card base itself. And I'm going to put this all the way down into the groove here and go ahead and adhere that. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim this right side, okay? All right, so now we have our mountain layers, kind of see how that's set up there, and we can work on the front of our card. So, designer series paper. Now you could like cut this as one piece altogether, but honestly, really how necessary is that? The seam right here is so small, can't believe anyone is really gonna notice it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start adhering on the back of this designer series paper. If you don't have golfers or you only have a few golfers you need to send cards for, then you can use your card all these other ways. So the other thing you can do is you can look and see if you happen to cut, look, which I did, and match your pattern that way. So matching your plaids, it's like a thing in sewing, right? All right. So I'm going to put some adhesive on here and I'm going to butt this up right here, and really, unless you watched my video, you'd never even notice that that was off, okay? So now we have a designer series paper base. Next thing I'm going to do is add some of the braided linen thread, which I adore. It's a great sort of masculine, feminine, all-purpose kind of item to add to a card, and I'm going to wrap it. It's just wrapped here around the front, and I'm going to go ahead and tie it. And if you can't tie it super tight, which honestly just happens, it's hard to get it all tight, I can show you a trick for, I'm not tying a bow, I'm just tying a knot. I can show you a trick for getting it slack out of it, so, okay. All right, so I did an okay job, not fabulous, but okay. All right, so here is my trick for getting the slack out of that, and I'm gonna turn my ends here and just give them a trim. We don't need like any stray weird lines, because what I'm gonna do is I am going to add these double trees on here, so they're gonna go here like this, and I can take some of the slack out by using Stampin' Dimensional edging. So I'm gonna take an edge from this dimensional, the mini dimensionals here. It's a little bit thicker, and I want these trees to come out about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fingers to press that slack into the middle. Let me see if I can zoom in. So see how that is, there's like that extra little flap right there. So what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna turn that into like a little S, and I'm going to put my dimensional piece across it, okay, so that it takes some of the slack out. Now I need to trim because I can't have my dimensionals go up into my card there, so I'm gonna trim that little piece off there. Now do you see how that tightened out that slack from there? All right, and then I'm gonna peel this backing off and go ahead and pop my trees on, okay? And then I'm gonna have to go back and add these parts. So we have our circle here, which I'm going to add, and when you adhere this, make sure you're not putting dimensionals over on this side, okay? Keep dreaming and go, oh, we're gonna go about there. And then I'm gonna add my clouds, which I die cut ahead of time. And same thing here, I can put a dimensional on, but only on the half that's going to go on our card. I don't want to put it on the right side where it would keep things from going, or keep things from opening and get stuck in weird places. And then I'm going to kind of cut our little keep dreaming here at a jaunty angle. Oops, there we go. And I'm going to trim it down. Okay, so we're pretty tight on our words. All right, and then this, I'm going to pop another dimensional on the back and go ahead and adhere here, oops, over our mountains or our trees or up high. I'll put it up high. There we go. Okay. All right, so we have our pieces there. The last thing to do is to add our single tree, and this one I'm going to pop a dimensional on. And oops, I got a dimensional backing on there. Okay, so there we have our card, our Stairstep pop-up card using Mountain Air and the Majestic Mountain dies. Just a really great way to use these scenery pieces and just to show off just how fabulous they are together. So this is one of 4 projects included in my tutorial that is free to people who order through my LovenStamps online store during the month of March of 2020. You also, and that's free for anybody, any size order that's through my store. The other option is if you place an order of at least $50, you will qualify for March card kits to go from LovenStamps, which gives you, of course, the 4-project PDF plus supplies direct to your mailbox to make this card and one of the others from that 4-project PDF file. So if you wanted to purchase the stamps and the inks that you would need to make this project at home, then you can, of course, do that. But $50 of anything from my LovenStamps online store will qualify you to get those 2 card kits to go. So let me know if you have any questions about that. I look forward to sharing more projects with you soon. Lots of really great ideas with this Mountain Air die set or Mountain Air stamp set, just all kinds of great applications for cards for anyone who is adventurous and outdoorsy. So anyway, let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to sharing more projects with you soon. Happy stamping!